And we're live. Thanks everyone for tuning in. There's 30 people here. Give some love in the chat. Just let us know where you're tuning in from. There's a really exciting stream today that I've been looking forward to personally, just because my journey with music theory has been a rocky one from when I first started, just playing guitar and then trying to learn music theory and then trying to tie that into production. It's a whole journey, and we're really lucky to have Adrian Valia here today, who he's a London-based pianist and producer, and he has a really cool channel on TikTok, which I linked in the description below. He's also the author of the book. I had it here for a second. He'll let us know in the next when I change it over. But he has a really cool book that explains, it's called Music Theory Made Simple is the title of the book. And I look forward to checking that out. But really excited to have him. Super talented guy if you check out his channel and how he introduces people to music theory. Even if they don't understand it, they kind of grasp what he's talking about. And I think it really piques a lot of people's interest in learning further. And today's really special stream because he's going to show us some of these principles in a DAW, so in a production, and how he got to the final results. So without further ado, I'll introduce him here. Welcome to the stream, Adrian. Thanks for being here.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm having a great day today. Like I told you earlier, I had my lesson in French, and we were just speaking about just like how learning music theory or learning jazz is so similar to learning a language in the way that you kind of process it. I'm not sure about the science behind that. I've heard mixed opinions, but yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. And we haven't done a music theory stream like this before, and how it ties into production. And I know that's a pain point for a lot of people producing music. So yeah, I'm happy to get into it. I don't know if you wanted to further introduce yourself, how you got started.
That was a great introduction. Thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah.
My journey was, I started with music production at school. Then jazz piqued my interest, so I started studying it. I grabbed a few theory books. I started listening to some tunes, and then I decided that I wanted to go to school there. So I went to jazz school for a few years, and then COVID happened, and I realized that I was in this situation where I wanted to talk about deeply nerdy stuff with other people, but I had no one around me to discuss such matters. So I did what I had to do, which is I opened a channel and started discussing those things there. And that happened to resonate with people. So that's where I got started. And eventually that became a big part of my career. And later on, a big part of my author career as well, where I express many of the concepts that I go through in my videos, and I break them down from the most basic form. So yeah, that's been the journey so far.
Yeah, it's amazing. And feels like a book I should have had when I was first starting out, because I remember I just got thrown into the elementary rudiments of theory, and I was just hacking away at that book. And it can be really dry if you're not too passionate about it just yet. But yeah.
Sure. I think the main challenge, and that's what I tried to address, was that you need to learn the language of music theory before you learn the music itself and the concept itself. So there's definitely a barrier of learning what a treble clef is, and what a bass clef is, what a pentagram is, what all of these notes are. So I decided to use a different approach where I use shapes and color and numbers, things that people are already familiar with, so they can digest even more complex concepts more easily.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out, because I've watched some of your stuff on TikTok, which is incredible especially with the polyrhythm visualization is so cool. But yeah, looking forward to digging into that. Just want to give a shout out to some people in the chat. We've got people tuning in from Uganda, East Africa. That's super cool. Thanks for tuning in. Doug from Alabama, USA. El Crow says, finally work training done now for this. Sorry for being late. Yeah, no, thanks for coming. Anytime you tune in is a great time for us. So thanks for being here. And yeah, James says, nice hoodie, Adrian.
Thanks.
But yeah,
it's a gift.
Yeah, let's get started. So what will you be like sharing on the stream today? What did you prepare, I guess?
Yeah, so I wanted to kind of share a short tune that I made recently and kind of go through some of the concepts that I use all the time to create interest in a piece, to create a variety, to create different sort of feelings. So I guess the approach is going to be more like learning a few tricks that involve music theory, but it's not so much here's what music is or how it should be. It's more like these are elements that make up music and this is how you can play around with them. Right. So that's essentially going to be the approach. So as soon as we're ready, I'll get started.
Yeah, let's dive in. We have Bishop from Lagos, Nigeria. Really cool. I guess this is a good time for that region. Really happy to have you here on the stream. Yeah, let's dig in when you're ready, and I'll just switch the scenes so people can see what we're working with.
Cool. Let's do it. All right, so switch this up. And now. All right. So let me know if you can see everything.
Yeah, it looks great.
Awesome. So here's the piece that I would like you guys to listen to first, and then we'll break it down bit by bit. There we go. And he ended it there. All right. So yeah, that's the piece. There's a lot of things going on. It looks kind of busy, but actually is very, very simple. We have a bunch of effects. There are just special effects, then drums, which are here. There are all these regions over here. I'm just using plain samples. And then we have bass and some keys, and that's all there is to it. So once we group everything, we can see that there are actually only like 4 elements in the entire production. So very simple in terms of the instruments involved, but the techniques that are used make the whole thing more interesting. So there are a few things that we're going to see. First, I would like to come here where I have some MIDI ready. So this is just a regular groove. So the first thing that I think when I'm going to create a track is what kind of tempo, what kind of mood it is. So in this case, I wanted something that was very snappy and kind of flexible rhythmically. But we don't always have to go that way. We can choose the simplest thing. So let's choose this loop, which, by the way, I grabbed from this plugin. It's called Addictive Drums, and you can actually go into any of these groups, and you can actually drag them as MIDI files anywhere. So that's what we did here, and then I edited the files later. So pretty simple groove. The first thing that we can do without touching too much is what's called anticipation. So here you will see that I have muted a region. Let's see if you can see it clearly. This thing in gray has been muted. I just press T, and then I go to the mute tool, and I can mute and unmute that. And the reason why I've done that is because the kick, which is this region right here, it's coming a bit before it should. So normally it would come on the 1. You can see that every 2 beats, we have the beats here, there's a kick. Every 2 beats, there's a kick. And in this case, we're actually splitting that beat in half. And that's exactly where it's coming, right here. So it should be coming here. And I just anticipated the whole thing. And I muted the one that was supposed to be coming on the 1. The reason why I did that is because that creates that sense of anticipation. If I just unmute it, it feels normal. If I don't, let's start from here. Super easy technique that we can apply any day, and it just brings that little bit of variety to our groove, something that many of you probably are using instinctively. But if you weren't quite sure how to phrase that, that's exactly what it's called. Very similar technique that we can use as well, and that is used on the tune that I showed you earlier, is just coming on the 2nd beat. So what that means is that I not only mute the first the kick, but I will also mute the hi-hat. So as you can see right here, there's absolutely nothing on the first beat. So this is how it sounds like. I'll just pick it up from the previous bar. There you go. And it's a very interesting sort of thing to take away the kick, because that's where the strongest pulse is. Not only because of the bass frequency, although that of course helps, but because the first beat is the strongest of all. When it comes to a 4/4, we will have the 1 is the strongest, then the 3, then the 2, and then the 4 is the most unstable of them all. So that's why we usually get all the feels, all the different changes on the 4th beat. And usually we land on the 1 very strongly, so people can feel that they're back into that groove. And whenever we take that away, it really catches your attention. So this is kind of playing with that, sort of creating an expectation and then deceiving that expectation. So what's happening here is that I'm doing something called grouping notes. So in a groove, you can always go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can keep dividing those notes into halves. But you can also group these same notes into different numbers. So right here, if you look at the hi-hats, which are these regions over here, you can actually see that they're not coming every 2 or every 4 subdivisions. The subdivisions are these lines over here that divide every beat, right? We have 4 subdivisions per beat. We can divide them into other numbers, and we'll get into that in a second. But for now, just know that we can divide them into 4, into 2, or just every beat. So here, we're starting on this second subdivision, and then there are 3 rectangles, 3 rectangles, and 3 rectangles, and 3 rectangles. So what we're doing is we're taking the value of this this note, which by the way is a 16 note, and we are grouping it in a number that is not the value itself. So if we were doing just straight 16 notes, we would have this, right? taka 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 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. And in this case, we're just accenting every 3/16 notes. So that's exactly what's happening here, and this creates this sort of movement, kind of like you have a different tempo inside the current tempo that you're in. Very interesting. Let's loop that just for a second. So again, a very interesting technique that you can use, just grouping notes into different numbers. So you could, for example, you could group in 3 instead of using it for the hi-hat, you could use it on the kick. So let's see how that would sound like. You probably are familiar with that sound. That sound actually comes from grouping the kick in 3 for a short period of time. So here we're starting on the 1. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. And then we're back to where we started. Now notice that this whole thing, for it to resolve, it would be 3 bars. And because we are doing a beat in 4/4, right? This is 1 beat till the next beat. We're actually extending this rhythm, and that's why we're using the snare here instead of the kick. So this is how it sounds altogether. Now let me shorten it to 3 bars so you can see how the groupings of 3 resolve by themselves. Da 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 da. There are 2 different tempos happening at the same time, but we are extending this groupings of 3. So once we are done with the whole cycle here, we're just adding another bar, and that way it just goes back to the groove nicely, as opposed to have a bar that is too short. However, if we want to create an even greater change, we can kind of take away some of the values of these notes and create the illusion that we're actually changing the tempo when we're not. So that's what's called a metric modulation, when you take a value that is different and you make that your new tempo. All right. So if this whole thing is 1 beat, right? We're gonna say, okay, so what if a beat and a half was the new beat? That's what we're gonna try to explore. Where all of a sudden we say, okay, a beat and a half now it's a quarter note. It's the downbeat. How will that change? Or how about 3/16 notes? So we take those subdivisions. What if it was shorter? All of a sudden you will have a beat that is much faster, and then you can always go back to the older one if that's what you want to do, or just go into a completely different place in your composition. So let's see how that would sound like. It might be a bit wild to some, but it's pretty fun. Let's check it out. And by the way, this very change was present in the song that we listened originally at the beginning of this presentation. So it was just done in a way that felt a bit more natural and is not as isolated, but it can be a really cool effect just to transition between sections. For example, if you want to create a sense of urgency, you might want to feel like make the listener feel like the beat is speeding up, even though it isn't. So here's what's happening. Let's break it down. So right here, we have the regular beat. And at this point, what we're doing is that the hi-hats are changing. So let me mute these for a second. And we can see that now the kick and the snare are coming in every 3 16 notes, which is what we mentioned earlier. So what we have is essentially a groove that is cut 1 16 note too short. So one of these subdivisions over here, too short. It's coming in a bit earlier. Okay? That's the first thing. Now, in order to create that illusion that the tempo has changed, we need to divide this new space between these two notes in half. So that means the hi-hat needs to come in between these two exactly. So all that we do is just think, okay, what is half of 3? Right? Of 3 16 notes is 1.5, right? 1.5. So this is exactly what we're doing here. We have 1 subdivision, then half. I'm going straight in the middle here, and then I'm adding this new one. Then this is the half and 1, and that's how we create this change in perception of our tempo. And we go back to the swing of things. So pretty handy. If you want to create this sort of transition effect, it can be really cool. And as I said, you can also just keep going and make that your new tempo if that's what you want to do. Cool. So I feel like that was quite a bit of information. So let me know if there are any questions.
Yeah, I asked to see if there are any questions. Nothing yet, but James actually had a question, but maybe you'll dig into this. Is what's your favorite chord progression?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so we're going to go into chord progressions. But sure, we can go through some of that. One of my favorite chord progressions goes like this. It's all percussion. No, I'm just kidding. Let me get the keyscape properly. There we go. There we go. So if we were in C, it's actually very beautiful. It starts in C major, and then it goes into E flat. And the reason why I like that is because this is another way that is a bit more tender of playing C minor. So we're going from C major into C minor. And then going down to D minor, and then into a really cool chord, which is D flat, F, G, D flat, F, G, and C. And this is called it's a major chord with a major 7 and a flat 5. And then back to C. Really beautiful. Anyways.
Yeah, that's also my favorite progression.
Is it?
I love the flat chords, man. Oh man, like you know, the standard Green Dolphin Street. I'm sure that's a good one for that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, that's one of the best examples. What's this Brazilian song as well? It's a duo from Brazilian song, and they use that all the time. and they actually go even further. They go from the 1 into the 5. So it does this whole thing where it's into so it's like a whole chromatic until it actually goes into the 1. I don't know if you could hear that.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah, I love that. The descending bass line stuff is always is nice for movement.
But yeah, it's so simple yet so effective. I love it. Cool. All right, so moving on. Let me see. You're in the Logic stream, right?
I am, yeah.
Okay, great. So where were we? Right here. So metric modulation. Everything's clear so far. So now we're getting into another territory, which is kind of more field-based. So whenever you have a groove, you can make that groove completely quantized. Quantized just means like snapping to the grid, and it's going to sound very exact. And sometimes that's exactly what you want. In many cases, including the beat that I was doing, many parts I fully quantized because I wanted that sort of mechanical feel, like but in some other cases you might want something a bit more relaxed and more organic, and that's where the word microrhythm might pop up. And microrhythm just means very small amounts, like very small spaces in rhythm. That's all it means. So when you subdivide a beat into very big numbers, you can move it by very small increments, and you get these sort of differences in the rhythm where you might feel that that note is not in a different subdivisions, it's just a little late. And there's a easy way to do that, which is simply dragging the regions a bit forward or a bit backwards. And then there is a controlled way to do it, which is subdividing the beat into a particular number of beats. And that's exactly what we're going to see here. So this is the straight beat. And just so you can hear the difference. There we go. So that's what's called a quintuplet swing. So a swing, it's essentially when you divide a beat into 2, but that division between 2 is not equal. It could be the first beat is longer than the second, or it could be shorter than the second. Some people might be familiar with the idea that it's only the former example, but you can actually have swings that swing the other way around. So here's a way that it can work. You can simply drag this note that is normally right in the middle of the beat, and you can just drag it anywhere. Or you can do what we did to create a very specific and accurate relaxed groove. So this is how it works. We have something like this. And what we're going to do is that we're going to make this note a 16 note long. And then we're going to repeat it. And then we're going to repeat it. And then we're going to repeat it. Now we have 5. Okay. Sorry, we have 4. I don't know how to count. And we want to, again, use a number that is not 4 in order to create this sound. We could, of course, mute these 2. And that's going to give us another sort of feel that is very accented. Da, 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 da. If we want to create something more subtle, it will have to be somewhere around this area. So what we're going to do is create another node. So let's just create one more here. And now I'm going to press Control T. It's easier to do this in Ableton, but there's a way to do this in Logic too. And now you can actually move the nodes like this. So now you have 5 nodes per beat, which is pretty cool. And this is how they sound like. Beautiful music to my ears. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to deactivate it by pressing again. And we're going to mute the first, the second and third quintuplet. So we're going to go to our mute tool. And then the last one too. And now there you have it. That's a quintuplet swing. Now we have 2 nodes. So this beat is divided by 2 accented subdivisions, right? But the second one comes just a bit later. So obviously you can do this by eye as well. But this is a really cool way to create this very precise rhythm. There you go. I'm just going to undo that. And there we have it, quintuplet. Very nice. Now, the other thing that we might have to keep in mind while we're doing this is that the beat before was fully quantized in some respects. So here, we could have had the kick come in exactly at the last 16 note, right? Da 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 da. Nice and quantized. However, when we're dealing with these more relaxed grooves, it's better if all the elements are somehow relaxed. So if I had it right here, if I had the kick right there, fully quantized against this more relaxed hi-hat, it would definitely create a contrast. It's not that you shouldn't do it, but just be aware that there's going to be a discrepancy between those 2 elements. All right, cool. That's cool. What if we align it to where the quintuplet would normally be? Now it's somehow in the key. We can also make it at the same time as the hi-hat, the 4th quintuplet. Interesting as well. Kind of a unison. And here we just have a bit of a break to again give more variety, but there's really nothing new there. Okay, so let's go from this one into the final form of our groove. Okay, so what the heck was that? This was what's called a fractal or nested swing. So it's quite a interesting sort of concept to explore when we're looking for very organic and kind of wonky sort of rhythms. And the way we're going to achieve that is by doing exactly what we did here and just do it over and over again on top of itself. So the way that it would normally work is that you would get your quintuplet swing, just like that. And now you would get rid of the muted ones and you make them a full value. And then you get this. Okay, awesome. Now you drag them here. And we're going to do a little trick, Control T. There we go. And now we can place them on top of the first one, right? And we can do the same thing for the second one too. So we can drag it here. And now, there we go. And now we have the first layer of our nested swing or fractal swing. So there you have it. And we can do even more. So if we add another layer, let's do that right now, just so you can see how the final result looks. So if we did this again, right? And now we grab this. Whoops. Is it not letting me? There we go. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to make a joke about Logic not letting you go down the fractal rabbit hole.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't like it. I've done my fair bit of just tempo changes, like modulation, all that sort of stuff. It doesn't really like. But when it comes to topless, I'm really pleased that they have this tool though. Not many people use it, whereas it comes very naturally to other people in Ableton, for example. Right, let's duplicate this. And now we're going to do the same thing where we make this set of notes fit into the second half. Again, don't fight me. There we go. All right, and that's the rhythm. It's crazy, I know, but that's exactly how it looks like. So what we're doing is just getting rid of, let me deactivate the tablet maker, and we're gonna get rid of these, and then you can use whichever one you want. You can choose this one. Let me mute these so you can hear how this sounds like.
This seems like a great tool to use for like a percussion kind of, loop or something.
Yeah, it just gives you that this thing that kind of speeds up, but in a very wonky way.
Right.
As opposed to just your regular, which still feels very machine-like, or it just doesn't feel as human. Come on. Even if it's just for the one beat, just to add that effect, it can be so cool.
I'm wondering.
Sure.
Go ahead. No, play it, because I was going to ask about something else, but go ahead, because just so to hear it in context.
Obviously, if you keep going, then it can get kind of like that dubstep song, polyrhythm, and you can go really crazy. But if you use it as an effect, like the way that these few bars are laid out, then it can be a great tool.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could get into the harmony when you're ready, just because I know that the way you think about harmony in the DAW can be sometimes a real pain point for most people, and I know people try to fill in every other note to build chords, but is there anything that you could lead to maybe share with the audience, I guess?
Sure, let's do it. Yeah, so that was essentially the last bit anyway. So
oh, sweet.
So yeah, we're jumping straight into harmony. So the way I like to think about chord progressions and melody in general, it's just these three categories, which are just the chord that feels stable, the chord that creates some sort of movement, and then the chord that creates the most tension. And most chords can fall within one of these categories. So those are kind of like your primary colors. But the more notes you add, and the more notes you add chromatically, the more you can get in betweeners. So you might be able to get chords that are quite tense, but you have one that adds even more tension, and then it gets resolved that way. So there are many ways to direct this energy. So the way I think about this is in terms of whole step and half step. So that's super easy to see in the DAW. Let me show you right here. So I'm using the velocity coding just so you can see very easily where these notes land. So in the case, let's just say that I'm in C major. So C major would be my tonal center. That would be the chord that feels like home, right? So then I look at every note that is 2 steps away from those notes. So for example, we have C, and then we have C sharp and D, right? So D, which is which I'm using the color blue to highlight it. That is the note that's going to create movement. So you can hear how this doesn't really create much tension, but it's definitely not the arrival note, right? And let's forget about these just for a second, because they are a whole step and a half step away from one another. And then we have G, G sharp, and A. That's another note that has a whole step distance between one of the chord tones, right? So that's going to be another note that creates that sort of movement without it being too tense, right? There's not a very strong pulling force that takes you back, but there's definitely some movement in there. And the other one, which is very interesting, is B flat. So, and this might come as a surprise for many because this is known as a dominant chord, which usually results into something else. But the truth is that is only because your 1 is not C major, is a completely different tonal center. If this is your 1, actually B flat is a nice moving point to C. Whereas B natural, the one that is in the major scale, although it sounds very pretty and very yearning, it actually contains more tension in there. And tension is not necessarily dissonance, it's just tension. So the way we would create a chord progression is by utilizing the notes that create movement, the notes that create tension, which are all the ones that are a half step away, just a single step away from the tonal center. And then these two, which are kind of in-betweeners, you can use them for both cases, the F and the F sharp. It just depends whether you highlight the difference between F sharp and G, then it's going to be more tense. And if you highlight from F sharp to E, it's going to be less tense. So that's why we have things like C, E, D, and F sharp. And we have other things like C, F sharp, and G, where like that definitely sounds a bit more tense. Cool. So when thinking about chord progressions, the best thing to think about is, okay, so let me pick up C major. Whoop, is that C? No. Let me pick up C major, and I'm just going to add another third on top. So that creates this 7th chord, right? And I'm using only the white notes because those are the notes in the C major scale. There you go. And then I'm starting from the 2nd degree. So that is D, 1 step up. And I'm skipping 1 white note every time. And I'm doing the same thing starting from the 5th degree. 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Okay? And this creates movement, tension, and resolution. super cool progression to utilize. And this is how I want you to think of all progressions. Like whenever you're thinking, okay, let me rethink this 2-5-1. Let me rethink this chord progression. So we could do, right? But how could we, if we just follow the whole step versus half step, we could do something like this. And that would still feel like I'm creating some sort of movement, some sort of tension, and some sort of resolution. That's how emotionally your ear perceives it, even though the color is completely different from what I played originally. So you can do this, and you can also do this in a minor context. And this is, I think, is going to be helpful for a lot of you guys. If we get the relative minor of C major, which is A minor, and then we add a seventh on top, skipping one white note, right? Have E, F, and then go to G. Now we can build on the second degree. And for the 5, we are actually going to use one note that is outside of C major, because otherwise that chord wouldn't serve as a tension chord. So let me show how it would sound with all the white notes. Very nice. But that, to me personally, it feels like movement, movement, resolution, which is fine. But now compare that to, instead of using G, which is a note that is a whole step away from A, from one that is a half step away from A. So much more satisfying. So whenever you're thinking about how to come up with chord progressions, just think, which chords are my movement chords? And which chords are my tension chords? And from there, it's just you just have all your colors, and you just have to start painting and see what would happen if I add this bit of tension to this chord. Then how can I create more tension so it resolves well? How can I perhaps, create the expectation that this is going to be resolved, but I take it somewhere else? That's when you start thinking more gesturally about harmony, instead of feeling like you need to learn a bunch of theory to sound good. You don't need to necessarily. You can learn all the theory, of course, but you can just follow like very simple principles, and that's going to get you there. And then figure out how it is that I name these things, how it is that I vocalize these things, how can I communicate this to other people? And that's where music theory comes in very handy. Cool.
Nice. Can we switch back to the just your full cam and see if there's any questions in the chat? And I have a couple questions actually myself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, let's do it.
Nice.
How can I? Just give me a second.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to show to the world the eternal. Yes, there you go. All right.
Nice.
So we're back, right?
Yeah, that's great. I'll just ask the audio button that you had there for the.
Yes, give me a sec. Mm-hmm. You should be good.
Cool. Nice. Yeah. Let us know if you have any questions about music theory or producing theory in the chat. I had a question while you were presenting that. Now, it's weird. Like my musical journey, I started on guitar, and then I started learning music theory. And my perception of music from what I learned on the guitar and the stuff that I was working on learning the music theory it felt like two different worlds on how I perceived music. And it took a long time for those two worlds to finally come together, where I was able to kind of, think about it naturally and still feel about it naturally, if that makes sense. Like I could, but it was such an analytical thing when I first started, where it was a completely different thing for me, and I didn't consider it because it was so technical. I wasn't emotional about it until I didn't have to think about it anymore. And so what I'm getting at is, like, for those people that don't necessarily know music theory, what would be like the pros and cons of them learning it, or maybe thinking about it in this more simplified kind of way?
Sure. Yeah, I think you're addressing a very big problem, which is that in many music schools, especially when it comes to jazz school, I feel there's somehow they do a very good job at disconnecting you from the reason why you started music, which is kind of sad. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to school, but you should try to remember why you started music in the first place, and always try to connect with that side of you that enjoys sounds and engages with music more emotionally. I think that's very important to keep in mind at all times. And sometimes when we get into, this works because it's the 505 in this flat 10-2 chord, like that's not the reason why. Like there's a feeling first, and then we articulate it with theory. That's the difference. And sometimes, I get people tell me, how will you, like, how does this make sense in a functional harmony sort of way? And I'm like, think about how it feels first, and then see how you can describe it to someone else. That's the best part. So answering your question, I feel like there is absolutely no downside to learning music theory. You just have to take it as a set of tools that help you make better music faster, as opposed to a set of rules of how music should be.
That's great advice. Yeah, that's it pretty much. Yeah, we have yes, El Crow says, thanks for all the information. I was curious about the same thing. I come from a self-taught drummer background, couldn't finish the classes as a kid. Yeah, it's tough if you don't have the right teacher that's not good at connecting your emotional side about music with the tools that you could learn to help you, improve. I think that's really important too.
Yeah, there's definitely a side whenever it's what we were talking about earlier, whenever you're in front of something that you have no idea about, like you're trying to learn this new language, you kind of have to make an effort to not give up and feel anchored, and try to visit things that speak to you. Because I feel like sometimes at music school, you can, be doing technique exercises for 2 hours, and you're like, you learn very quickly that you disengage, like, you're doing these, like, I don't know, this spider exercise or something like that. And you very quickly, like, completely separate yourself from what it is that you're doing for a very specific goal, which is fine. But that, for extended periods of time, of course, can lead to just feeling unmotivated. I feel like that's a feeling that the many people who have studied at music university have had at some point or another.
Yeah, because if you're doing things that you're not attached to, it's like, why are you doing them in the first place?
Which can create a big identity crisis as a musician.
Yeah. It's like, well, why am? Yeah. That's great. How do you feel about some of the AI tools that are coming out specifically for music creation? There's lots of like chord generators now where you just pick the colors you want. You pick the extensions. I think like they're super helpful. My viewpoint's a bit biased because I kind of know what I'm getting into. But for people that maybe don't have the time to learn music theory, I think they're pretty helpful tools in getting them to a point where they're able to pick something they like and express themselves that way. But that's my view on it.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a pretty healthy view. I think it depends on your goals. It depends on your role. It depends on your situation, really. I feel like if you want to use it to inspire yourself, we already do that. We already do that with so many tools that were AI before AI become trendy, and that's an okay thing to do. It's just an intelligent model that like helps you do that. That's great. If you simply cannot afford to learn it right now, but you would like to learn in the future, that's also an okay thing to do. Is it a substitute for learning? No, I don't think so. But can it serve as an expressive tool? For sure, because you don't need to know music theory or know how these chords are built together in order to know if you like them or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like, I want this vibe. Yeah. This vibe is perfect for this beat.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's funny. I was back home for vacation, and I was like, I brought my Mac with me, and I was just screwing around in Ableton, and a friend of my brother's came by, and he was making music. We used to keep in touch, but I haven't seen him in a long time, and I showed him what I was working on. I'm like, yeah, I'm just having fun on the push and everything, and he's like, yeah, I use Logic because Ableton's for non-musicians that don't know music theory. And I'm like, what? That's such a horrible thing that's a horrible viewpoint to have. Like, I don't know, at this point in my, I've used most of the DAWs. They all do the same things differently.
Yeah.
And
do you remember what was the argument behind that statement?
I don't. I think there's still the DAW wars where people feel emotionally attached to their workstation, right, and why it's better, and like really they all do the same thing. It was just kind of like, it wasn't a full conversation. I didn't get a chance to rebuttal because he just like had to leave. But I was like, wonder why he said that. Like maybe it makes him feel better about, maybe he wants to learn Ableton, but he's afraid of it, so he's kind of making himself. Anyway, the point is, like, the DAWs, they all do the same thing. You can do, I mean, like you were saying with that function where you were kind of, how do you say, like diminution, like you're diminuting the chords to a specific, yeah, they all do that. Like, it's just that they all have different ways of working, but yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's just different workflows. Like, I think Ableton works great for some things. And the fact that you can edit something and it's still looping, I wish Logic would be able to do that. But then Logic is so complete, it just has so many things. It's such a all-rounder, not to mention free updates, and it's got like so many things. So it really depends. Pro Tools is also a great DAW. It has lots of great, when it comes to working with audio and external hardware, it has lots of experience in that domain. So they all have their strengths, but they can do what you need them to.
Yeah, exactly. And what I'm finding is useful for people just starting out, especially with music theory and chords and stuff, is those scale highlight functions like you see in FL Studio and in Ableton. I don't know if Logic has that yet.
I don't think so.
And it highlights the keys that you should be focusing on.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Perhaps I'm wrong. I never used it.
Right. Yeah, we don't really need to. We don't have to think about it anymore. But yeah, I find it immensely helpful for people that are just starting out with, because like you run into it. You do music, you run into it eventually, and it can be a frustration. If you let it be a frustration, because I watched some of the Dead Mouse masterclass, and he doesn't know music theory. He's just like, I have these notes. I like how they sound. Let's try this one over here. Oh, that sounds funny. Okay, I'm going to move it, and you just move it one step away, and it finally and they're all working in what you just mentioned. They're all working in that journey of home away, tension release, and that's basically all of music.
That's it. Yeah,
taking people on a journey. So,
and you can just do it by ear. You will get to the same place, But if you know like those basic rules of like, okay, these are my stable notes, these are the ones that are going to create this, these are going to create that, then you might get there just a bit, in a shorter span of time.
Yeah, yeah. Rochelle Gomez says hello from Houston. Thank you for tuning in. I think we're just approaching the end of the stream. But yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. El Crow again says, might have to find a tool similar to that on Ableton. I haven't seen any keys highlighted on my end. Yeah, it's in Ableton 11. It's a recently new feature. It should be in the piano roll under scale, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah. Yeah, let us know if you have any questions about music theory in the chat. I don't know if you had anything else to add. We usually go for an hour, and seems to be like a good length. I don't know if you had more to get into. Sorry for cutting it short there.
No, that's all good. I mean, that was pretty much it. I was just gonna show the bits in the piece that I showed initially, and where I used those different techniques, of like grouping notes differently, or starting on the second beat, or using a 2-5-1, that sort of thing.
Starting on the second beat is such a cool thing. It just like you drop out and come in on beat 2, and then it gives a whole new excitement to the piece of music.
That's right. Yeah, they're just like small bits of vocabulary, but if you can visualize them in the grid like that, it's just so much easier to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the end, it's just stuff that we all heard before, and this is how you do it.
James has a good question. Does knowing more about music theory help you better avoid writer's block? No, it does. Like for me, no, for me.
No, I agree. I don't think it does. No. But what helps you is having a process. Yes. So if you have a process of like where you start and where you finish a song, that helps you whenever you're not inspired. So you're not procrastinating and just thinking about how you're going to get this whole thing done.
Yeah. And like your piece that you played, which is, it's pretty complex, but I'm sure it's just kind of like, you're just hacking away at small pieces to make the whole, right?
Right. I even highlight on the markers. I will say, this is how this section should feel. This is what I'm doing here. So I have already kind of a framework before I even start doing anything. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is going to be my intro, and it's going to feel like da, 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 da. And then I have my verse, which is going to go like this, like long chords, whatever. So I highlight all of these emotional sort of context. And then I get started, because that gives me sort of direction. And then I might deviate from that.
Right.
But that is my process, and that helps me, because I know exactly what to do every time that I sit in front of the computer to make a song.
Yeah, because you have it kind of sketched out, and then you have the inspiration and ideas to build on.
That's right. Yeah. And it might take me somewhere else, but as long as you have something that is kind of muscle memory, that's going to help you so much whenever you have writer's block, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know if have you checked out Rick Rubin's latest book, The Creative Act?
No, but it's on my list for sure.
I listened to the audiobook because you can get a free trial with Audible using a different email address. Mm-hmm. and grab it, and it's the most insightful. I have to listen to it again because it's deep, but he really gets into how the universe just gives you ideas, and you have to capture them and build on them, and he goes through the whole process of doing that and what to do when you're stuck, and it's a game changer for just mindset and like how the creative process works.
I agree. Have you read the book The Music Lesson?
No. By
Victor Wooden.
Oh wait, I bought it for my buddy for his birthday, but I didn't read it.
He talks about exactly the same thing.
Okay, you know what? I might have read it like many years ago, but yeah, I saw him here in Montreal with the Flecktones, and yeah, what a guy, man.
Yeah. Very similar mindset.
Yeah, we'll have to read them and then report back one day.
I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, book
in terms
club.
Of mindset, discipline, just your concept of time.
Yeah.
And it's very much in tune with what you were saying.
Yeah, and Rick Rubin's whole philosophy is just so deep, because he's worked on some of the biggest records, and he's just like a conduit that guides people towards opening themselves, kind of thing. It's very cool the way he works. It's neat.
He's all intuition. There's
Exactly.
nothing else. It's like, I'm not sure if that would work for everybody, but it's just so fascinating to see how like just immense trust in yourself, and in your vision, just and being open to whatever it needs to happen, just kind of works out.
Yeah, exactly. And tying into that, the last book that I'll recommend is The War of Art. Not The Art of War, The War of Art by James Pressfield. Mm-hmm. This is more of a book about just consistency in the act of creating. So just setting a time, doing it, and then, you do it every day. And the overall takeaway from the book, which provides a lot of good strategies and mindset things, is you just have to keep doing it. And it doesn't matter if you have a bad session, at least your consistency is there. And then the next time you sit down, it's going to be a good session. So it's just like life roller coaster. It's the same thing. You put the time in, you're going to get stuff out of it either way. So
yeah, you got to show up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that being said, I'm going to go home and show up. Sometimes we do them on the live stream too. And like, I think that adds another layer of pressure where I put myself into creative block. It's pretty funny on camera, so I hope people find that entertaining. But yeah, it's been awesome having you on, Adrian. I hope that we can do this again and explore some more stuff. Be sure to check his TikTok channel out. The pieces that you put together there are just incredible at illustrating the different music concepts, that people might have a hard time grasping technically. So yeah.
Thanks so much. Yeah, that piece is on my latest Instagram video, so you can check it out there.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'll have to put your Instagram link in the description as well. So I'll find that. I'll chuck it in there. But thanks everyone for tuning in. It's been, this is a fun one. So we'll see you next Thursday. I think we're going to be digging into some AI vocals. I don't know if you've tried those.
Wait, which one? What do you mean?
Like you can put your voice into an AI and you can make like yourself sound like a different singer.
Yeah.
So I'm going to expose myself a bit there, I think. And
very controversial topic for sure.
Yeah, because like I'm not a great singer, but if I tune myself and turn myself into a soulful woman, it might pass a bit better, Might get some more streams.
There's a very interesting account which is called There I Ruined It.
Yes,
I don't know if you come across.
Yeah.
You came across it?
Yes.
So yeah, an interesting use of it for sure. I find it so amusing, but of course, it's not trying to release songs. That's another topic.
Yeah. Elcro says thanks for the lesson. Yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Thanks again, Adrian, and thanks for having me. Your day. Yeah, we'll see you later.
See ya.